Welcome! So today I want to talk about shadow work and the completion process in particular, given that it is my great passion and my great joy and vocation. I want to share with you why that is, why I think it's so powerful, what it is, and maybe even whether that's something for you or not. So I want to start with from the beginning with awareness expansion. I believe many of us are on this journey in life to find our truth, to understand who we are, what is aligned with us, what we believe in, and to learn more about ourselves and the world and how it works and our place in it. And I believe that when we start on that journey, especially if we come from a background of trauma or having difficulties in life, we begin on the journey on the end, on the polarity of light work. And with light work, I would include all the aspects mental, emotional, and physical and energy. So it could be about affirmations, retraining how we talk about ourselves to retrain what we see ourselves worthy of consciously. It can be retraining our nervous system and our physiology, taking more care about ourselves so that we feel better in our bodies. It can be energy work, receiving energy healing so as to feel that release of old stuck energy and that upliftment. And all of these things are incredibly valuable and probably very key parts on the journey of awakening. And um, more and more I've seen in the last few years, we're starting to realize that the uplifting work, the going only for the joy and the positive, is not enough. It's not integrating all of who we are. So more and more we have this recognition that we want to integrate all aspects of ourselves, the negative or difficult emotions, the negative or difficult beliefs and mind states. Not that we want to embrace them as this is the truth of who we are, but so that we can fully understand where they're coming from and if there are any needs underneath those, to meet those needs so that we can go on more happy, more fulfilled, more present. So on this journey, we tend to at some point realize through our own lived experience that everything outside of ourselves is actually a mirror of our internal state, because we perceive what we're able to perceive. We have all these filters around our experience that tells us this is the truth that we're experiencing. And so it's not just about the closest relationships where this is rather clear. If we feel something, the other part feels something as well, and there is this conflict that needs resolve from both parts. But this is all the way up to the biggest world events. We're not separate from anything really in this world. And more as we start to integrate ourselves, we start to see this naturally inside ourselves. And so if the goal is to be free from all of our limiting beliefs and all of our limiting perceptions in the world and everything that keeps us in separation, then once we have realized this, we feel that it should be easy to just drop these beliefs, these limitations, and move on with this new, more open worldview. And oftentimes that is not so easy. So if we recognize that the mind is going somewhere, but the emotional body isn't quite there, or the physical experience isn't quite there, then we still have integration to do. And the reason that it's not so easy to drop a belief, and this is especially true if we tell ourselves we want to believe this and yet another belief comes up and up and up again, there is something attaching us to it. And that something is usually emotions that we've never dared to feel at its depth. So we've felt it a little bit and maybe a little bit more, but we've never completely and fully been present with it in all its intensity. And so moving forward, when without acknowledging and fully sitting with these emotions would be gaslighting, because we're telling ourselves we're having this belief now, but the emotional body has another truth. So to integrate ourselves, we need to completely sit with it and build trust from this part of ourselves that it will be heard no matter what. This trust building is really becoming friends with our emotion. It's changing the relationship that we have with everything that we're going through, that we don't need to fix. We don't need to overcome our emotion. We don't need to press them down, push them down. All we need to do is allow. We need to make it safe for them to express themselves. And when we do, there is a truth underneath that feeling. There's always a truth underneath that feeling, and usually it's an unmet need from something unresolved from oftentimes long ago. And once we can meet that need consciously, then the emotion doesn't need to be there anymore, and it is free to release. And we get into that flow where an emotion can come and we don't resist it because it's our friend. We know it's just showing us a need. We meet that need and it goes away. It doesn't get stuck in our being. So this is where the completion process comes in. The completion process is a very profound method to work with any trauma, so complex trauma, abuse of any kind, family, cultural trauma. It can also be equally potent for any smaller life trigger. So if we have relationship problems, something at work, self-care is not working, self-alignment, we're curious about how we can feel more aligned to our truth, anything that you can think of can be worked with this process. So it's a one-on-one process. The practitioner guides you through a number of steps, but it's a natural flow and it's organic, so it depends always on where you are, and crucially always have a choice on whether to go deeper into something or to explore something else, or to cease the session altogether. It's always up to you, and that is an incredibly empowering thing in itself, that you really steer your process. The practitioner is only there to hold space for you unconditionally, to explore this process and help you poke a little bit into what it is that you're feeling and invite you to feel it more deeply. Practitioner is there to hold a completely safe space for you, and so that means a space that is non-judgmental. It means a space that is free from suggestive commentary or imposed belief or any kind of pressure to perform anything, to get somewhere, or to feel anything that you're not actually feeling. Really, the practitioner is only there to hold compassion and love for anything that you're not currently ready to do but want to. So it's unconditional witnessing. And what the practitioner will begin to lead you through is what we call emotional Vipassana. So it's really just sitting with it, sitting with the emotion and accepting that it's there and feeling the perceptions in the body. It's a very somatically grounded practice where you get to feel into your body, the sensations as they move around, how your feelings actually feel. And maybe it's not so somatic for you. Sometimes it's more like you get images of for example, a wall that you're experiencing towards an experience, or any kind of imagination can show up. There can be memories in terms of visual memories, or any sense perception, smell or taste, or um, sensory experiences. Anything can come up, really, and our job is to explore all of this unconditionally, curiously, just follow one sensation to the next and witness. And it is it's important to recognize this is kind of an underlying assumption for the process, that everything that shows up in this process is there for valid reason. So whether that's an emotion, that's a thought, an idea, or a sense perception, it's there for a valid reason. And we don't need to know the reason yet, but if we spend unconditional time with it, with the emotion, with the perception, whatever it is, then the reason will reveal itself. It's not something the mind can grasp onto, because it comes from the subconscious. Okay, so this is the role of the practitioner too, to help you tap into that subconscious and let the mind rest. And this happens through validation, through letting yourself know that all of these things that you're experiencing are okay. Even if there are elements of imagination, which there often is, even if there is elements of something being of an event being much bigger than it actually was. So what we need to remember with this is that oftentimes we're integrated something from our childhood, like we were 3 years old and our reality then looked very different from our reality now. So now if we see a child losing their toy, for example, that we recognize that that is not the whole world. The child can get a new toy, but for the child, that might be the very first experience of loss. That child may have never experienced losing something, and that toy was something that they loved dearly, right? So it's a very emotional experience, and we need to be sensitive to that and accepting that there is no such thing as too small. There is also no such thing as too big. Nothing too silly, nothing too childish. Everything here is welcome. And oftentimes, if there is a severe trauma, especially, or a complex trauma, we can tend to cope through imagination. So we project parts of ourselves into imagination in order to be able to go on with our lives. This is especially true when things are related to our caregivers, because the caregivers were our fundamental support in life, basically. So we depended on them to get love, and we depended on them to get all our needs met. And if those needs weren't met, instead of understanding like an adult can that probably the caregiver just didn't have time at that particular time, or they didn't have the capacity to meet our needs, for us as a 3-year-old, say, it was the whole world, and we internalize oftentimes that something must be wrong with us for not receiving all this love or whatever it is that we need. And so we need to work from the perspective, the understanding of this inner child. And so we've talked about this being a gateway for the subconscious, and the importance of that is that the subconscious holds everything, every piece of information that we need to resolve, that we need to figure out what those unmet needs were, so that that part can feel relief and resolve around this situation. We can meet that need within the process in our imagination, and then we can go on to meet that need in our actual real world. And when we do, as I mentioned before, the emotion that had been stuck, the energy that had been stuck, has no reason to be anymore. It can simply dissipate and be away. So, what else is there to say? So, I want to be clear about one thing here. The goal is not with this process to create more storyline about what we've been through in our past. For a while, it really seems that way, and that is valid and that is a necessary part of the journey. However, the goal is really to release that emotional attachment to the storyline so that eventually you can release the storyline altogether. And this is how we move towards finding unity and wholeness and love with all. We release the separation that we have created around ourselves with our stories and begin to feel that unity that is underneath it. That is the ultimate goal. And more tangible in your life, it is to be able to be with your human chaos, to experience the totality of it all without freezing, without fawning, without fleeing or fighting, to be present and be at peace with it. So it comes in different steps. It's a building of self-acceptance, of self-trust, of self-intimacy. It is the relief from all the fears that we've carried around these parts of ourselves, all the shame that we've carried around these parts of ourselves that were never seen. It is with time a deepening trust in the world around you and your role in that world, because you trust yourself and then you begin automatically to trust the world around you. So you don't have to feel unsafe anymore. You don't have to feel like the world is judging you, or that every mistake you make is wrong. There is nothing wrong that you can do once you find this integration, this alignment with yourself. And once you find that intimacy with yourself and acceptance, you find that in your relationships too. So the intimacy in relationships is greatly increased and enhanced. And finally, and not least, once you when you continue to work on this process of accepting and acknowledging, embracing all of your emotions and all the needs underneath the emotions and meeting all those needs, you also begin to feel this worthiness in your life to experience whatever it is that you want to experience. So not just safety and compassion, but deeper love, deeper joy, more abundance. Whenever we release this resistance within ourselves towards experiencing that which we desire, we can actually experience it. There is nothing in the way of it anymore to experience it. The one thing that was in our way was the belief we had around it, and if we release the emotions attached to that belief, then the belief is gone and we're free to choose whatever we want to experience. So those are big and lofty goals, and maybe you're not there yet, and that's fine. This is a process. This is a life process. Really, it's a lifestyle of integrating shadow and light. So with shadow, I really just mean, I don't mean what is uncomfortable, although oftentimes there is a lot of discomfort to dive into the shadow. But what I really mean is to illuminate everything in our subconscious that has not yet been illuminated. So there can be tremendous treasures in it, along with the pain that we did experience that we do need to acknowledge. So it's the shadow work of illuminating, and it's the light work of choosing what we want to experience and uplifting ourselves and choosing joy. And it's this balance that we find along the way of doing both of these things and integrating all of these parts of ourselves as our wholeness. I hope that this was interesting to you. I hope that it answered some of your questions. If you have more, please comment below if you resonate with anything or if you want to learn more. Please stay in touch, share this video, whatever you feel like doing, do it. And I'm very delighted that you stayed present with me for this talk. I hope it was inspiring in some respect or way for you. And thank you for joining me. See you next time. Namaste.